Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race, we are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 296 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for being here today. 296. We are closing in on 300. I do have a special guest in mind for 300. However, that special guest is not a runner, but they are someone I have had on my dream list for a long time. I first reached out to this person in early 2019, and I've been sharing their work ever since. And they finally came back and said yes. No, it is not Adam Grant. I can already hear, no, it is not Brene Brown. I can already hear some people thinking about that. I wish both of those. However, this person is just as cool. I'm not going to tell you who, but you can start thinking. Now, today, I am excited to introduce a guest to you who has a wealth of background, experience, and knowledge in the field of nutrition, in dietetics. I can never say that word. She has a private practice called Nutrition Energy. She has been a consultant to the New York Roadrunners for 10 years. She is certified specialist in sports dietetics, and is a certified diabetes educator. She has written for all kind of publications, presented at conferences all across the country, all across the US, and just too many things for me to name. So I'm very excited to welcome Lauren Antonucci to the show. Lauren also has been connected to me through a friend who you will hear, and I just loved her approach, her energy, and it's been a while since we addressed nutrition, so I thought this was a great thing to be doing. And today we are talking about a lot of things that I don't think we've covered before. I ask a lot of questions that many of you have asked me, and we talk about the primary things that we're going to be talking about are just knowing how to find that good relationship with our body, especially when we're given so many conflicting opinions. Also talking about how to know we are fueling with enough. And I bring up quite a lot of very honest and open experiences from my past of how I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite bring it to my voice to say it out loud. And I think this is going to be quite healing for quite a few of you. And then finally, we go on to talk about masters running and fueling as a masters athlete. So I think this is going to be an all-round great episode, one we are going to refer to again and again. So without any further ado, let's go meet Lauren. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Now, I have been talking about Tracksmith for years now, and as it is around Earth Day, I just want to let you know that the items that I received back in 2019 are in exactly the same condition as just out of the package. Their items are high in quality. They work incredibly well on runs to wick away the sweat, to keep you comfortable, even if you're in one of those runs where the temperature is changing throughout the run. So you start off on a little bit on the cold end and you finish and you're a bit warm. That's why I mention often about the Brighton base tank. But today I wanted to tell you about something that I think pairs perfectly with the Brighton base tank if you haven't already tried it. I've also mentioned to you that the Session Speed Shorts by Tracksmith are my favorite shorts. And now, inspired by the hundreds of thousands of miles that have been logged in their best-selling Session Shorts, they challenged themselves to build a top that can handle any workout. So the brief was simple. They wanted to maximize comfort and performance without sacrificing versatility. Ideal for runners, right? They hunted high and low to find the best fabric and obsessed over its feel, durability, and stretch to ensure this top would never see the back of the drawer. They are incredibly proud of the result, and I can confidently say it is a fantastic t-shirt. I am really excited about these session tees. I've been loving them. They are such a nice cut. You can get them obviously in men's and women's, whichever you prefer. I know some of the women listeners like to wear the men's shirts, and I actually even heard of some of the male listeners to also enjoy the females. But either way, these session tees from Tracksmith are fantastic. And friends, you can get free shipping, plus 5% of your order will go to Runners for Public Lands. And you can do that by going to, well, actually the easiest way is probably just to go straight to the show notes. Wherever you are listening to this, there will be show notes. There will be a link directly to Tracksmith. It will show you some of my favorite items, including the session tee. And you can just go straight through and go get it. And you can also use code TINA15 if that is easier for you at tracksmith.com. Hi friends, before we get started, I just want to mention something that I keep forgetting to tell you about, and that is that the Running for Real team is now collecting up what we are calling Run and Reflect notes for each episode, which means we are getting 10 key takeaways that each guest has either said or we took from what they were saying in the episode, with some reflection questions that you can either use in your journal, you can think about while you are running, you can think about them while you're doing chores. It's just a great way to think about the messages that we heard in the conversation, and also for you, if you want to, if an episode really spoke to you, then it will be a way for us to take notes rather than you. So with that, you will be able to go get those in the show notes. So you can go to the show notes for this episode, and wherever you are listening to it, you will see the show notes. Go click on the Run and Reflect notes, or fill in the box where you can put your email address, and we will email it right to you. Again, you want to check the show notes and find that box where it says we'll email it to you, and we'll get it right to you. There'll be one every week from now on for the episode, and let's get on with the show. Lauren, I am so excited to welcome you to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tina. I'm excited to speak to you as well.
Yes, this is going to be fun. And I would like to thank our friend Christine for connecting us, and just, well, for being who she is, but also for, putting this connection in and us getting talking. And I think we're going to have a good conversation. That is some things I haven't covered before, but some things we have, but just in always hearing those different perspectives and those reminders is always helpful. But I want to begin with your own background. You've been running, swimming, and cycling for as long as you can remember from what I have read. You've done 13, is that correct? Or has that changed since?
Marathons?
Yeah.
That might still be correct. It would take me too long to try to count them up. We'll go with 13. Yeah. That's perfect.
Well, I feel like I lose count, and I'm only at like 7. I'm like, have I done 6 or 7 or 8? I can't remember. So I feel like the people that say I've done 57, I'm like, wow, how do you remember that? Like, I really struggled. I mean, they must have a note of it somewhere or something. But but anyway, so you've done 13 marathons, have a PR of 3:09, which is very fast and impressive. So well done there. But I would love to hear, we are going to be talking about relationships to running. We are going to be talking about getting our fueling balance right. But talk about your personal experience in that way. Have you always had the right outlook on running, swimming, cycling, on your sport? Or is that something that you had some hiccups with or setbacks that made you have a passion in this area?
Good question. I think it's so interesting when you listen to someone's question, like you phrased it, have you had the right outlook? Well, what is the right outlook is the first thing that I think. And then I think if we're all honest, could my outlook have always been right or healthy or perfect all the time? Let's go with no. Like there are going to be hiccups, right? Yeah. And if anyone has escaped and had perfect relationships with everything in their life, then maybe they'll find some later, or maybe something miraculous has happened. But I would say as a kid, I was a really active kid, and I apologize to my mom sometimes that she didn't get to sit down for the first 10 years of my life because I was just always moving. And that's just who I am. So, sometimes when people say, oh, it's so impressive that you do all of this, I'm like, it's not impressive. I was born like this, right? It's just the way I'm wired. I have to work on slowing down. Meditation was something I really had to work at thinking I could do. So moving is natural to me. I would say throughout high school, I ran, and thankfully, I had two, I'll just say male coaches, just because shout out to them. They were amazing and supportive and nothing but encouraging. We never, ever heard a word about our weight or fueling or anything. Now, maybe
Right.
it would have been great if we spoke about fueling, but I'm 47 years old. So like nobody was talking about fueling back when I was 12, 15. So the fact that we stopped at McDonald's on the way home from a track meet, while maybe not the best choice, was a perfect thing to do, because all it showed is like, you ran, go eat food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I had a great relationship. I would eat things before my workout because my friend was selling Snickers bars, and I'd eat one and we'd run. And I never had a stomach ache and no one cared. So for that, I'm grateful that that relationship was cultivated. You like to do these things, do them. One year I swam and ran, and I must have just eaten enough. Again, I remember we stopped for lots of food on the way home. There were lots of donuts that someone could judge and say, maybe that's why you became a dietitian. No, it's not. We were just doing what was normal. And so sometimes I'd eat 2 donuts on the way home from swim practice.
And the people you were around, there was no, like, because that's obviously, we can go into talk about that in a bit, like the impact of others. But there was no one around you?
I would say no. Now, my swimming was a very modest level, right? I never reached a high level, and I switched over to running after 7th grade. When I did both, I switched over to just running, and swimming was something I picked up again much later. And when I started doing tries, was happy I had put in that time. But I would say no. In high school, I had one really good friend that I remember at one point we had a discussion about, and had a really difficult conversation with her that we saw that she was struggling and probably not eating enough. And that was the first time, other than I was thinking about this while I was running this morning, like, what's Tina going to ask me? I was like, I remember watching that Karen Carpenter special in health class and being like, oh my gosh, what a beautiful, amazing person and singer, and how sad, and not having a personal experience to relate it to until that friend. And then again in college, at least one of my teammates in college seemed to struggle with anorexia over one summer, lost a bunch of weight. But again, the coach's response was amazing. It was, hey, we see this. You can't run like this. Let's get you help. It wasn't really discussed. She came back and ran. So I think I'm fortunate in that that wasn't the pervasive culture. I wasn't running at your level though, Tina. Like I was at a D3 school. I ran really hard. I took myself seriously, but it wasn't the same. So maybe that played into it as well, but I'm grateful for it.
Yeah. And I mean, how rare is that? I mean, I personally don't know if I've ever heard anyone share a story background like that before.
You know, I think it is pretty rare. I mean, now for the past 20 years, I've been talking to all kinds of athletes and history, and I full on expect swimmers, runners, gymnasts, all kinds of things. We expect that that's in the culture. And it's one of those, you don't know how good you have it until later. I then reflect back and say, I'm grateful to all of those coaches for never once saying, should you eat that? Why would you eat that? What is your weight? Never, ever heard that. That was not our culture. We were lucky. I think it is more unusual, and that is really sad. And I don't know that that's why I went into this. Although, you know, if you asked me in college why I switched from a medicine focus to nutrition and clinical focus, there were 2 things, like family history on my dad's side of his high cholesterol and all that, and me seeing my mom make oat bran muffins and switch to fat-free stuff. And we were in that, I mean, I got caught up in that fat-free phase in college for sure. It wasn't necessarily disordered eating, but we all had this pattern of avoiding all fat, which wasn't healthy and wasn't correct. And then we all had to kind of overcome it and say, wait, this doesn't make sense. And none of this stuff tastes that good. And why am I making cookies with applesauce and putting vinegar on my salad? And thankfully we learned and stopped, right? So there was that culture. But the rest of the side, I think, you know, again, I was pretty lucky. And I do think, especially the higher performance, let's say D1 schools or elite level, it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare.
Well, and that's, I mean, as you say that though, as I hear you talking and saying about grateful, like, yes, I did have a few comments along the way that definitely stuck in my mind, like almost those, if I look back on my life before, let's say age 20, I'd probably say I had 5 comments on my weight. And I probably had hundreds of thousands of positive ones, but I remember the negatives. Although that said, I do remember sitting, now you say it, thinking about the coach, my primary coach who got me running, who got me to where I was, to where I wouldn't be here without him today, who I talk about a lot, Brad. He never mentioned that. He had a very healthy approach to eating as well, in just the way that he, not healthy as in ate clean all the time, but just a well-balanced approach. So I wonder how much of it, with me saying it's rare, is that it's just a case of those few negative experiences stick in our minds better than all the positive ones. And just as they do, as everything in our life does, this is just another example of that. And so maybe it's not as rare as we think, but some of us just maybe hold on to these negative ones so tightly for some reason. And remember them, they kind of block out all the good stuff. So yeah, it's interesting.
Totally.
To think about.
I think as you say that, I mean, I'm thinking, we were talking about our kids before this, two things, like in parenting, I think we tend to say no a lot more than yes. And people tend to remember, it's just human nature. We tend to remember the negative comments. So knowing all of that and knowing the type of personality that many of us have as athletes, which is a pretty, I hate the term, but whatever you want to call us, type A, overachiever, trying to please, there's a reason why we find all this performance and hard work fun, right? So whatever that is, it goes along with being highly critical of ourselves a lot of times. So maybe those comments land a little harder. Whereas if someone told me they didn't like my ears and I never thought about my ears being a funny shape, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
But if it was something that I was already sensitive to, or was, just lands harder, and then we kind of think about it over and over. And also now that we've been thinking about this for so long, I think there's just so much danger in not talking about it, that there's so much good that can come from constantly putting out messaging of positive fueling, thinking about ourselves in a positive way, teaching coaches and parents how to talk to young people and people of any age, about their bodies in a very powerful, positive way, not in a punitive way.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I love that, and we're going to go into that a little bit more. Just two questions before we go into this a bit more. One, you mentioned about being active, being just one of those kids who was moving constantly. A lot of people come to me, and I would imagine to you too, and say about that, I've just always been someone who needs to move. How would someone know if they are just saying that because their disordered eating patterns don't want them to sit still, because they see that as sloth-like, and I need to keep moving to keep burning calories, versus I've always been that way? Do you understand the question? How do we
100%.
know which one of those?
100%. I mean, I think, first of all, you can think back to when you were a kid, right? 2-year-olds don't make things up. If you want to color, you'll color. If you want to run, you want to run. My mom tried to sit me down to color, and 2 minutes later, I was throwing a ball in the house, and she moved me outside. So some of that you could think of just what your natural sense is. And then really, if a person is asking themselves an honest question, or I'll do it with clients in here, it's well, I've always been really active. It's that's awesome. But if we're going to be that active, then the fueling, if it's coming from a good place, should also feel really free. As in, Tina and I just went for a long run. We stopped from bagels. We chatted the whole way. We both ate the whole bagels. We drank the juice. Neither of us thought about it very much. We enjoyed the conversation. We moved on. Later, one of us was hungry. We told the other one and stopped for food. It's all happening very casually. Just I always make analogies it's freezing cold here in New York this week. It's cold. I grabbed a jacket. Did I think I'm a bad person for needing a jacket? What's wrong with me? No, it's cold. It's 24 degrees. Grab a jacket. I'm hungry. Eat food, right? Yep. So I think it's the way we then think about the fueling and think about ourselves. So someone can get to their self-talk, or that's something that I will ask clients all the time. And then, of course, the therapists and psychologists will do a really good job of helping with that. And I work with some amazing therapists in that space that work specifically with disordered eating patterns to really challenge those things. Because I think we know, right? Is it I'm afraid to take a day off because I need to eat today? That's a disordered eating thought, right?
Yeah.
Or is it, man, the worst thing you could ever do to me is lock me up inside of a room for days and not let me out? Like, why is that happening? Is it because I need to burn calories, or is it just because I'm, stir crazy?
Yeah. Thank you for breaking that down. And thank you for the example about, what was the example you gave there? Something that you said about taking a day off. I distinctly remember in my past being like, oh, I've got an injury, some kind of niggle or pain that's come up. I know I need to take 3 days off. Okay, well, I'd better cut back on the eating for a few days. When
That's right.
like now I'm like, that was I knew it. I knew it deep down at the time that meant, hey, if you're like thinking that like I'm taking a day off, okay, immediately my metabolism is going to like stop dead and be like, you need to back up. Like that was like that thinking was flawed, and I knew it back then, but now I can kind of give myself like, oh, like I feel for that person, feeling like being that, like you said, it wasn't like I could continue eating and say I'm going to keep replenishing my body. It was immediately like, okay, well, I'll cut back.
That's right. So, but that thinking pattern was taught. You didn't make that up. You didn't think that way when you were 2. You didn't say, oh, I'm 2. My mom let me watch a movie. I shouldn't eat a snack. That's ridiculous. Like little kids. And I picked 2 because somewhere around 2 is when the research shows it starts to get conditioned out of us, and we take in the messaging from others. And that's where, food becomes the reward. You see kids, if you remember your kids,
I am in that
somewhere
right
younger,
now.
They're different. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely feel that right now.
Yeah. And that's when, I don't know, personally, I would say I would get on people in my life, in our family. If they were making comments, I'm like, okay, these need to stop, please. If you have comment, if you want to ask me a question as a dietitian, I'm totally on board, but please, let's not complain about how we feel about our bodies and what we just ate in front of anyone, but definitely not in front of the kids, because that's not helpful to anyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my youngest is turning 2 in a few months, and she is still very much in the like I eat when I want, I do what I want. Definitely already showing signs of being 2. But the 4-year-old keeps saying to me like, can I have a treat? And I'm like, well, a treat is anything we don't have very often. And I know what she means, but she'll keep going, but can I have a treat? And I'm like, yeah, we haven't had bagels in a while, so that was a treat. And I try and like reframe it that like treats are, and I was like, God, it was such a treat to go to the park today. We haven't, like desperately trying to keep that word away. But also being, when she'll say to me like, if I eat my apple, can I have a treat? And I'm like, well, food isn't reward. We eat food when we want to eat food. So yeah, sure, you can eat your apple, and then I can get you something else. And I'm trying, but already I'm trying at home. Already I'm seeing this word keeps coming back in. Can I have a treat? Can I have a treat? Can I have a treat? And I'm like, where is this coming from? So I'm already starting to accept that like I don't have the only influence anymore. And I'm seeing it like manifest, and it's at times frustrating because I'm like, I so badly wanted to train you in every way to like have this good relationship, but now I'm realizing I have so much control, but not all of it. So
no, but the best we can do is try to work within ourselves to make sure we're in a good place. And this goes for food and anything else. And then if we're not, own up to it. And if someone has struggled with disordered eating and eating disorders at 2, it's not really appropriate to tell your child that. They're not going to understand it. When they get older, they will know before you think they know. And it might be appropriate to tell them, because then it becomes something that this is something I'm struggling with and working on. Just like anyone who has a child, have you ever yelled at the kid? And then I'm like, I'm so sorry. I hate when I yell. I don't want to. I'm working on it. Much better than saying like, I yelled, who cares? So I think that we can do that. And then in terms of the treat thing, I mean, a lot of it, this intuitive eating movement that's come up in the past decade or so, I think baffles the heck out of people. But really, if we think about it in the way I describe it, it's like Go follow around some 2-year-olds. Think about any 2-year-olds you know.
Mm-hmm.
Watch them. They will eat the broccoli if they love it with just as much gusto as the grapes. And if they take 2 licks of the ice cream cone and their friend calls them, they throw the ice cream cone on the floor. And that is what should happen. Mm-hmm. And sometimes they'll ask for ice cream in the morning. And I think we do them a disservice by saying, well, we only eat it after the broccoli because we start to put higher value on the ice cream. So those are things you can do at home, and you have much more impact on your kids than everyone else. And then they will come home at different times and kind of explain to you or tell you, or you'll see other things that happen. So I think as long as you're aware of it, you're doing the right things, and they will figure it out. And we all live in the world. And so you'll encounter all kinds of people.
Yeah, so true. So then my next question to relate to that was, I mentioned earlier about the people around you. How important is that for maybe someone who's has struggled with disordered eating patterns, who maybe doesn't have a great relationship with food? How critical are the people we surround ourselves with in terms of our own relationship moving forward?
That is a really good question. I feel like no one ever really asks me that question. Beautiful. I think that's something that I talk to my clients about specifically all the time. And I can think of many, but one recently, and she'll know who she is, and thank you for this little anecdote. She said, I was going away with a friend, and we've talked about how maybe this friend is really in the throes of an eating disorder, and it's not helpful for her to be around this friend. And she said, I don't think I'm going away with her because it won't be a good idea. And that was not an easy decision because she really likes this friend, but that's what it takes. And so, it's just like, I like weird analogies because they make sense. If I'm trying to quit smoking and I stand in a bar with people smoking, what are the chances I'm not going to have a cigarette? They're really low, right? And so if I'm surrounding myself with people that struggle with thinking about their body in a positive way or fueling enough, and that's the environment I'm in, and I'm already susceptible to that, it's going to be hard. So to the extent that you can, choose the friends or choose to spend more time or eat with people that have a better relationship with food, because it'll help you see what freedom they have and what value that serves in their life, which is the way I think about it, right? It is not true that each food choice we make decides our worth as a person or our performance as an athlete. And I say that as a performance dietitian. I focus on, this is how we fuel for a marathon, or this is how we lower your cholesterol, right? Like some people that I work with are no interest in running, and they want to do that. That's great too. But surrounding yourself with people, just like someone who never exercises, if they suddenly get some friends who move, maybe they'll move. Maybe we'll get them to go for a walk. Maybe they'll think running doesn't look terrible, because we look kind of happy when we come back. So super important. So if anyone can recognize, hey, I'm hanging out with this group and everybody's playing around with their food, or everyone's talking about counting carbs or macros or grams or weight, this isn't a great place for me to be. And are there other people that might be better to surround myself with right now, at least?
Does it ever work the other way, where like someone might have that background, but then is getting to a good place and is able to say, you know what, I'm going to have the appetizer plus the main, even if everyone else has salads. And then maybe by them saying, I'll have the, creamy pasta, please, that other people might be like, oh, well, I can't quite go for the creamy pasta, but maybe I could go for the pasta with shrimp or something.
Right.
Like, does it ever work that way, or is it generally quite difficult to flip it that way?
It works that way. And that is the beautiful, amazing thing, in that we are evolving people. And it takes getting pretty far along in one's recovery to get to that place, because what it takes is being really confident in the fact that I can trust my body. And if it's hungry and if my body wants this, everything is going to be okay. And when we're coming from that place of fear, what if I gain weight? What if I don't run fast? What if this choice is unhealthy? I'm stuck. So once we can get someone past that, and the longer they've been practicing, whatever we want to call it, intuitive eating like a 2-year-old, right? Sometimes I want broccoli. Sometimes I want ice cream. 10 a.m. There's no judgment on me for what I eat at 10 a.m. versus 5 p.m. Should I eat some vegetables sometimes? Yes. Is protein important? Yes. Could I have ice cream for lunch one day? Yes, all of those things can be true. And when you can feel comfortable and confident, then sure, but that person is not at all responsible for anyone else's reaction. So let's say I'm in a really good place with my eating. I go eat, I order the greasy burger or the mac and cheese or whatever I want, or a salad and ice cream. And I could tell other people aren't into it. Maybe one other person asks to have a dessert. Maybe one other is triggered in a different direction. If they would like to talk to me about it, me being me as a dietitian or their friend, or seek help, that's okay. But that person that's in a good place is only responsible for themselves and their choices and how they feel.
Okay.
It could go either way with how the other person at the table is impacted, right?
So you basically have to decide if you are prepared to continue going ahead enjoying your meal, even if the other person or people stick to something that you all would have chosen in the past.
Right.
Will you still
and that can be very hard.
Mm-hmm.
That can be very hard. And it takes, again, I will say, this is not easy stuff, right? But neither is running a marathon. And how many of you have done that? Or neither is running a 10K or a 5K, right?
Mm-hmm.
People start running and they're like, this is terrible. It hurts. It's hard. Yeah, okay. Well, why do we do it? Right? Well, maybe because it's hard.
Yeah.
And why do we do it? Well, if we can free ourselves, so much time and space is gained. So not only will I feel better during my workouts and recover faster from them, but I am free to go on vacation with anyone, anywhere. And I am free to eat what I want and leave the meal feeling satisfied instead of feeling like I'm still hungry. I ate the salad. Maybe I should be full. What should happen? Maybe I go home. Now I eat the pretzels or the kids' things. None of that is fun. Mm-hmm. So it's really investing the time in saying, all right, I'm going to do some of this work to get to a place where I feel free and I am really benefiting. And again, it can often take a multifaceted team, right? It's not wake up one morning, make a decision, ta-da!
Well, you might make one decision, but then you'll backpedal it later in the day of, when you're feeling strong, when you're not feeling so strong, you might make a choice that isn't helpful to your body. Yeah.
And we've all done that with the day off, right? I mean, I would be 100% lying if I've said I've never finished a run or gone on a run that I was kind of thinking maybe I shouldn't because something hurt. But hopefully, now I've been running since I was 12 years old, right? I started in 7th grade. Mm-hmm. I was much worse at it in college. Like no one ever spoke to us about, oh, if this hurts, you should not run. That wasn't even a choice that was presented. It was like, you're standing upright, go for your run, go to the trainer after. So that had to be taught, right? And so now hopefully our percentage is better.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I was like, oh, this thing hurts.
That's a good way of looking at it.
I'm going to foam roll and sleep in or color or I don't know, anything that I can do. Get some work done, whatever you want to do, and take care of that.
Thank you to InsideTracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. As you know, I've been working with InsideTracker for a while. I get my blood tested every probably 3 to 5 months. I get mine checked. I'm actually, as you listen to this, I am hopefully going to have my results. I don't have it as I'm recording this because I had to push it back because of being on antibiotics. However, I wanted to mention to you that today our guest is Lauren Antonucci. And I asked Lauren off air, because I didn't want to put her on the spot, if she thought that runners should be getting their blood work done regularly. And she said that she thinks runners should be getting blood work at least once a year. Now, that does not necessarily have to be with a service, but we should be getting those regular biomarkers checked often. So that's our ferritin, that's our vitamin D. And if you have a way of looking at some of the other ones, that is great. Those are the ones that we need the most. But Lauren said that she thought it was just a real way for us to keep an eye on what's going on, just to see how we are from the inside. So that said, InsideTracker makes that nice and easy for you. And by the way, I haven't mentioned this before, but if you do go to your doctor for your blood work regularly, you can upload your results to the InsideTracker website and they will assess them for you. They will give recommendations for you. They will put it into their system for you. So that's a really cool option if you are someone who gets your blood work done regularly anyway. So you can also get the 25% off that, by the way, when you go to insidetracker.com/Tina. But otherwise, if you want to do it through InsideTracker, you will go to a Quest facility, you will get your blood work taken, they will assess assess the results for you, give you recommendations on how to change your food intake with specific foods you will need to have, and hopefully you will take them. As I've mentioned before, I haven't been the best at following through, but they will give you recommendations. They'll give you lifestyle changes. They'll explain the science if you're interested in it. You can work with a dietitian through the service if you want to, and it will allow you to track your changes over time. It really is such a cool service. So go to InsideTracker.com/Tina to go get 25% off at InsideTracker.com/Tina. Okay, so let's talk about fueling, getting enough in. Now, we've covered this quite a few times on the podcast, but it is a good reminder, and always good to hear different perspectives. And you've got some really cool analogies and ways of thinking of things, so maybe this will go in a different way. First, I'd love to ask you, I haven't ever asked anyone this before, is it better for someone to get enough calories, but let's just say you are in the middle of some town in the middle of nowhere, and all that is available is oily collard greens with honey buttered carrots and fried chicken and fries and, turtle pie for dinner, for dessert. That's all that's available. Or is it better to get, a quinoa salad with, the same, well, maybe not the same amount of calories, but quinoa salad with kale and goat's cheese and slivered almonds and whatever else. After running, is it better for us to make sure we have enough calories over getting nutritious, dense, good for us calories? Tell us your thoughts on that, because that's a question I often hear people ask.
It's a really good question. I will say it's like the most common thing I would post or say on Instagram and get slack back for. Someone like, you're a dietitian, why did you just post about eggplant parmesan? Like, because I just ate some eggplant parmesan and the whole point is that it's fine. Like, how could you recommend that? It's like, well, the quick, easy answer, and I'm not always good at quick, easy answers, is it is always better to just eat enough and to feel satisfied, because from a fueling recovery perspective, your body doesn't care as much about each food choice as your mind has been taught to. So all our bodies know after a run is, did you give me some proteins so I can repair those muscles for you that you'd like to use again? Did you repair or did you restock your glycogen by putting in any carbs? I don't really care whether it was maple syrup and pancakes or the most healthy carb you could imagine, whatever that would be, if there was such a thing as the most healthy, but the things people, sweet potatoes, right? Your muscles don't care. And if they could talk to you, that would be really great, because they would be giving you this reinforcement of just, please feed me, please feed me. So I talk for them. And as long as you get in some hydration, we're good too. Of course, over the course of our lifetime, yes, it is important to eat beans and grains and fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds. But that's a whole different question and a whole different ballgame. And I think a lot of athletes, again, because if we think about what does it take to become an athlete, and please, let's loosely define the term athlete as someone who sets goals for themselves and goes out, and we're not comparing our times to Tina's or to anybody else's. We expect a lot of ourselves, but the food is not the place for that, right? Big picture is much more important. So eat whatever it takes wherever you are to get the job done. Your muscles will recover. Your body will be in a better place. Your immune system will function better. You will be in a better mood. Maybe you're with other humans.
Even if you have food that's like, some people might think, oh, well, that food is sludge. It's not, it's going to make me feel tired and bloated or whatever.
So interesting, right? Because I do encourage people to pay attention. Like, oh, you thought you wanted that food, whatever it was, good or bad, if you want to grade it for yourself. How did you feel afterwards? And that can be an important exercise. But again, if my brain is making the assessment, not my physiology, then it's easily going to lead me the wrong way. So if we could disconnect our brains for a few minutes, that would be fun. Post run, and your body spoke to you and said, you're hungry. If you could listen to that, right? Like people say, how much do I need to eat? Well, I can give you an example in terms of grams of carbohydrates or portions of foods. And I think that that's useful. And I do that all the time. But for example, yesterday, I was really hungry on the way home from work. I stopped at this place that makes these delicious scones. And how can we check in with our relationship? The stupid place, I love the place, but they have the calories posted, which I hate. But I buy the scone anyway, and you see it. And I always think like, this is going to dissuade some people from buying it, which is interesting. So then I could easily go through and say, well, I should only have this much of the scone because it said a certain number of calories. But for whatever reason, my body was hungry. I ate a bunch of it. I was doing something with my daughter. I finished the scone. I moved on with my day. Everything was fine. I'll work it out later, right? Like that's the freedom that you get from listening to your body. If my body didn't want more and I ate 3 scones, that would be a time to say, what's going on in my life that possessed me to buy 3 scones and feel compelled to finish them now? Is it because I told myself I'm never buying these scones again? Mm-hmm. Right? And so we can kind of explore those kinds of things to get us to a place where you can say, I always say, I deserve the cookie. I own the cookie. Like I took it. It's mine. Or this is my scone, not I'm having a bite of someone else's. And I get to decide how much I want. And I don't know how much that will be until later.
What if someone you said about if it's your head or your brain versus your body, how would someone know? Like, what if they said, well, whenever I eat, I don't know, carbs or sugar or whatever, my body feels terrible. How do you know whether your body is actually feeling terrible or if it's just your mind kind of, like you said, the things that we've been kind of ingrained to think?
Yeah. So another great question. I mean, I think those are things to ask ourselves. So if you're not sure, which is totally normal, and it can be really hard for people to identify with hunger and satiety cues, or what's the difference between what I was taught is okay versus am I listening to my body? So the first is to just ask, well, how are things going? Right. So like a lot of the conversations I have with someone in the beginning, and maybe they come in because they had a stress fracture. That would be a classic way someone first sets foot in my office, or they've had 3 stress fractures, or they're not progressing in their training, or they feel crappy, or I'm like, okay, so it's pretty easy for me to sit here with my calculator in, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes and calculate ranges of like, here's what Tina needs: carbs, protein, and fat. Let's get a wide eye view of your ranges. And then we talk and you tell me what you're doing. And I can, even without the calculator, pretty easily be like, we need some more carbs here. And very often the person was like, I thought you were going to say that, or I knew you were going to say that. And then we start talking and it's like, well, yeah, maybe my recovery isn't that great. Or I tend to improve a little in the beginning of the season and then I plateau. Or my coach keeps thinking I should be doing better. Or why am I so tired? Or why am I so cranky? So there are other signs that we can look for to kind of help you clue in. And then, plug for registered dietitians that actually work with athletes. So this is what we do all day long. So it does not take us long to come in and be like, hey, no problem. Let me just help you. And I'll have friends that are like, I'm training for a marathon. Can I send you this for, this is what I ate for 3 days. I'm like, yep, Sally. I always say Sally or Jose. Those are my 2 people that I use all the time. Sally, you need more protein. Or, oh, Jose, your carb intake isn't what it needs to be. And then you can.
Do people tell the truth with those though? I mean, I had plenty of. I don't know if you know this or don't, but Nancy Clark was the one that finally made me like the light bulb go off in my brain that I wasn't eating enough. But I'd spoken to many nutritionists, not dietitians, nutritionists over the years who had looked at my 3-day chart or whatever log. Do people tell the truth, or do you think subconsciously we're gonna put what we think they want to see?
So that's something that, I was taught. First of all, Nancy Clark is amazing, and she was the dietitian I looked up to when I was becoming a dietitian, and I've met her since, and she's phenomenal. So no wonder why she kind of lit the light bulb for you. She's no nonsense. She knows her stuff. There are plenty of people that have followed suit there. Now, the first thing you said, maybe you didn't know in the beginning that nutritionist is not actually any kind of credentialed word. And many organizations will say you can become a certified nutritionist in 6 weeks. That's not really what we're talking about. So maybe some of those people weren't equipped to give that advice. The other thing is, I believe that people are going to tell the truth, or we can kind of find out what the truth is when they write down what they're eating. And if not, I can't help someone. I'm not responsible for forcing someone to tell the truth, but I can plant some seeds and say, well, but so why did we get 3 stress fractures, or what's going on with your recovery? And then maybe they'll never come back. Or maybe, which happens sometimes, a year later, they'll come back and be like, remember me from last year? I'm like, I totally do. I'm glad to see you. Let's talk about it now. So,
okay. So sometimes it just is going to take us a little, like I know with those, I was writing what I was eating for sure. But were my choices that day affected by the fact I knew I was going to pass this along to someone? Yeah.
And I don't know these people and I'm not judging, but there should be many other questions that are also asked.
Okay.
And what made you want to come in? What are your goals? What are your injuries? What's going on? And I would also say, I mean, there's a board certification for sports dietetics, which I took the second year it was in existence. You had to have been a dietitian for 5 years. And there's a reason why that certification exists. Just like, it's ridiculous. I mean, not to get me on that topic, but like, would you go to a person that says, I don't know, tooth fairy, and they're not actually a dentist, and let them fix your tooth? No, you wouldn't. Right. So, and maybe they were a dietitian and they just didn't understand the needs of athletes. I've seen that too, in which case we all need to understand, like if someone comes to me for nutrition and I don't do that thing that they're having a problem with, I'm going to refer them to someone else. That's the way that should go. So if they didn't understand your needs as an elite athlete and that you need 350 grams of carbs and that number does not scare or surprise me at all, but I expect it might surprise you. It reminds me, in my book, I interviewed 26 absolutely amazing humans, all masters athletes. And, Dina Castor, who's amazing on so many levels. And when I spoke to her, was talking about her fueling. She's like, I was at the Olympic Training Center. They made me write stuff down. They're like, oh, you're eating, thousands of calories a day and everything's great. And she was like, yeah, well, I listen and I fuel. And there are many reasons why she has been able to be a strong runner for so long. And I know nutrition is what I do, but that's a huge piece. You don't have a really long, strong career if you're not fueling your body. So we're going to find out eventually.
That's so true. And it's funny you mentioned Dina. I have a lot of friends who are good friends with her. And they've eaten with her plenty of times. And they always comment on the fact that like, yeah, I was with Dina and she like ate this giant burrito and then she like ate the rest of her husband's dinner. And I was just like, oh my God. And at the time I was like, yeah, like she should, I mean, I want to be around people like that. Like that's really, that's amazing. So like that person we talked about earlier who, I don't care what the rest of you are doing. This is what I'm going to eat.
That's right.
So that's really cool that you mentioned her. Before we go, well, actually let's finish going on this. Is there anything else you would say related? I want to do a little bit on masters fueling. Is there anything on underfueling? As you said, using that term loosely, athletes, of someone who's going for a goal, what other common missteps do you see people take, or things that people often ask you that you would like to share with the listeners on the topic of underfueling?
I mean, we could keep going for hours, but we won't. It's just, I mean, I'm passionate about it and it makes such a difference. Most of us want to keep doing what we like to do forever, or some version of it for as long as possible. And there are some things that are going to make that much more likely. One of which I use as an example because I was terrible at it for years. It's like the stretching work, like I'm 47. I can't get away with not stretching. It won't work. A week of no stretching, everything will hurt. If I do it, I'm good. So getting on top of whatever fueling mistakes you think you were taught, or people say, well, but I never ate after the workout before, or I never had a problem and I didn't used to eat before my runs before. It's like, well, eventually these problems are going to catch up to us, right? So, recognizing whatever patterns you think, I've heard, I don't know, let's say dietitians and or elite athletes who sound like they're really fueling well, so many times say how important it is to eat before or after training. And like, I'm going to work on this now before it becomes a problem. So kind of starting to get ahead of those, which is why I think masters athletes is defined as 35, and I didn't pick that age, but
35.
35, I know.
What? That means I'm 2 years away. Wow. I'm not even that.
Okay.
1 year away. Jeez.
It's fine. It's all fine.
That's insane.
It is, but I mean, I think what it speaks to here is to just say, we need to start thinking about these things earlier.
Okay,
I don't wait till I'm 70 to think, oh, maybe my needs are different and I should start stretching. And if someone out there is 70 and running and not stretching, I don't know how that's happening, but they're genetically lucky. Everyone else, and again, all of the athletes that I spoke to in here, and some of them were, I'm going to call them normal people like me. A lot of them were Olympians and elite athletes. And I think it's really refreshing to hear a lot of the stories go something like, well, I used to not have to eat after my run. Kara Goucher was like, yeah, I used to think I had to take in protein afterwards. And then I got to a point where I found out, you know what, it really makes a huge difference. So I did it. And, all the people that are running for a long time and look like they're doing well and fueling. So making those changes before you think you need to, or really trying not to get away with the mentality of like, yeah, I know this is not what I should be doing, but it's been fine so far because it will catch up. And the other big one is like, without major reason, we don't want to be avoiding food groups. So you have celiac disease, you need to avoid gluten 100%. We're with you and we're happy for all the gluten-free foods. Everybody else who's avoiding gluten and therefore has a great difficulty getting in enough calories because it's really easy to find pretzels and pancakes and bagels and pasta, and you've eliminated that, I would take a really good look at, is this helping me or is this hurting me, right? I get a lot of pushback. It's like, I'm a super science person, but we can take tiny little bits of science and blow them out of proportion and then come to really bad conclusions, right? So, again, if we took something just at face value, it would be easy to go down the wrong path. So to say, okay, yes, you've read online that gluten can be inflammatory, but let's really think about that, right? Like, we can eat plenty of other anti-inflammatory foods and we can take care of ourselves in so many other ways that gluten is not really the enemy. And you're going to get into way more trouble if you don't get in enough calories and enough carbs, especially if you want to perform at any kind of intensity, because we perform at high intensity and we're burning through carbs like crazy. So I like to have fun and feel good when I'm trying to work hard, not to feel like I'm running in molasses with a piano on my head, which sometimes happens, but it's nicer not to. And carbs are going to get me that feeling. Like, there's nothing better, right, than feeling fueled and doing what you want, instead of like, Tina, I'm dying. I should have eaten breakfast. Oh, this is the 12th time in a row I've said that. You'd be like, Lauren, what are you doing? Eat some breakfast before you meet me. Enough.
Thank you to the Boulder-thon for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. What is the Boulder-thon, you ask? Well, on October 9th, 2022, that is a few months away from now, there will be this second annual Boulder-thon, which has a full marathon, a half marathon, a 10K, and a kids run, and it is run in one of the happiest cities in America. You are going to run at the foothills of the Rockies and join the Boulder community. Yes, that community where so many of the runners we love and look up to live. You never know, you might run into one of them while you're warming up. This community, Boulder, is one of the greatest meccas in the US. That is why so many professional and running focused people have flocked there, live there. Honestly, I would live there if I could. I'm not kidding. I really would love to live there. It is an amazing place to be. And for the first time in history, they have an epic downtown Boulder finish. How cool is that? Can I actually come with you if you decide to sign up for this race? It just sounds a lot of fun. And Boulder-thon is sure to be an incredible event, just from what I am seeing here right now. You can check out their website by going to boulderthon.org. That's BOULDERTHON.org, boulderthon.org. And if you use code TINA, you can get $20 off the full or half marathon. So that's code TINA. That will get you $20 off the full or the half marathon. And friends, we've been trapped inside for so long. Let's go enjoy some of these races that the US has to offer. There are so many fun things to be doing, and this Boulder-thon is added to my list for sure to be one to be doing. Maybe you will even see me there. Who knows? I may end up signing up. Go to boulderthon.org to check out more information and go do that race October 9th, 2022. Thank you. Those are such important points. And we're realizing in this episode how much of food is tied up in just, the things that we've been raised to think, or the people we've been around and how they have been raised to think. But the more we can disconnect ourselves from things we think we should be doing versus listening to what our body is actually saying, the better. And, I've said this many times before, but as someone who really did struggle with my eating, and I've tried to explain the fact that I wasn't not eating. I was eating what I consider the diet of a non-runner. But I was just trying to do an elite runner's work on a non-runner.
Right.
So I was eating solidly for a non-runner. But there is another side, and that freedom that you have talked about today, Lauren, I feel that now, and I love it. I love the fact that I can eat whatever I want. I really have lost that, like, overthinking things afterwards or pre-thinking things before. So thank you for that, for going into that. Now let's talk a bit about masters athletes. How do things change with that? Masters often get told, or I guess people in general get told as you get older, you need to eat less because your body puts on fat easier, or you put on weight easier. So what about runners who are in the masters category, and they're just feeling conflicted? They're being told, I need to eat enough to fuel my body, but I also need to eat less because I'm older. Like, what? Just clear that up for us.
So we can clear that up, but as you said, it sparks me just one more thing on that, plus what you said a minute ago. Sometimes when you hear a thought in your head, if you can identify where that thought came from, like so many times, like, that's what my aunt used to say all the time. Or like, why am I saying like dumb phrases that I hate? And if I see this little magnet on someone's fridge, I'm going to throw it out for them and they can get mad at me. Like a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. That is horrible. So be like, that magnet was on my fridge. That's not my thought. I'm reading that. So if you can kind of take those statements out, same thing with what you just said. It's like, wait, this doesn't apply to me. I'm a runner person, right? Like you said, you were eating a non-runner's diet. It's really easy to fool people, especially non-runners. Oh, you must be eating enough. You ate the same as I did. Yeah, but you just ran how many miles today? And the person sitting there has no clue what you need.
Yeah.
So I get that all the time. Well, nobody comments that I'm not eating enough, right? The same as my sister or whoever. It's like, well, okay, what does your sister do? Well, she's an artist. Well, that's awesome. And what is her activity? I just made that up. But, comparing ourselves to people is not helpful. And thinking about where you got those thoughts from can really be helpful, because then instead of me against my mind, it's, my aunt used to always say when I was little, XYZ, or that sounds like my grandmother, or sorry, aunts and grandmothers. But I had to pick somebody. It could have been your uncle too. So we can try to get rid of those. And the same with, and that's part of the beginning of my book, which is called High Performance Nutrition for Masters Athletes. The beginning, we talk a little bit about the physiology and what actually happens, because, and I think this is just a good topic for all of us in general, of like, aging is not this horrible, scary thing that we hold on to our youth forever and then we're about to fall off a cliff. Like, that is not how it should be.
Yeah.
And there's no date upon which I wake up and my metabolism has vanished. Like, that doesn't happen. I mean, menopause is a moment in time when women will start to see a lot of changes, topic for another day. But aside from that, things take a long time. And the biggest predictors of metabolism and weight are fueling enough and maintaining activity. So if we're doing that, underfueling is a surefire way to slow metabolism, and that actually leads to weight gain long term. So I see plenty of people in my office who, for whom the calories in, calories out does not apply at all. Like, you've been underfueling for too long. Your metabolism has slowed down. I can test it. We've got this metabolic rate machine in my office. We measure their breathing for 15 minutes. I sit here and breathe in this little thing. And then we can see, okay, your metabolism is kind of slow. And I've done this with all kinds of different people, men, women, different ages. Like, okay, I think you're under fueling. Look at your metabolism. Let's fuel better. Let's watch your metabolism go up in 3 months, because that happens. And then support that person in knowing, okay, I'm a little afraid of eating more, but again, that's not the reality. And let's watch it go up. So first thing is, maybe that was a little bit of a tangent,
Well,
but first thing, it's not all inevitable.
Okay. Well, yeah. Do you want to finish this trail of thought, or would you be able to go back to it?
We'll see.
Okay. I'm trying to remember that. And not all inevitable. Go back there. Just a side point there. What you mentioned about metabolism slowing is for non-masters athletes, is losing your period for women and the other symptoms of red S. Is that the kind of the red flags for that?
Yes, 100%. Okay. And thank you for bringing that up, because, I think the easiest way to wrap our heads around and think about it there are so many things that our bodies do for us all day that we do not think about. And breathing is the first one. Unless you're running really hard and very aware of your breathing, which I was at some point during my run this morning. I was like, all right, Lauren, breathe slowly. We just take it for granted. There are certain things our body has to do, and there are other things that can become non-essential, and producing hormones required for menstruation is not essential to keep you alive. So that is one of the first things that will sacrifice when the body is lacking in fuel. So huge red flag. I will say the biggest thing that's changed, when I was in high school or college, even back in the dark ages, you'd hear, oh yeah, she runs a lot, she doesn't get her period, end of sentence. And that should not be uttered and is absolutely incorrect. There's no training volume at which we cannot fuel to maintain this person's status. And unless there's a medical condition, which is a very small percentage and should always be ruled out, 99% of the time, at least in my world, it's because we haven't fueled enough. So first biggest red flag, and sorry, males assigned at birth do not have that overt red flag, but females do, because if you're not menstruating 99% of the time, you're not fueling enough. And that's a sign that, yes, your body is having to scrimp and save or compensate. And we always use it as, I think I said before, a marker of health, the actual truth of the word health is not defined by how many servings of vegetables I ate this week. If I'm not menstruating, that is not healthy. And if I am eating more than I was before, that is amazing. And if I am still not menstruating, we are not done, right?
Yes,
we are not fueled.
Yes. Can you just list off the other red S symptoms before I want to go back to masters?
Oh gosh, sure. So bone health is going to be the biggest first one that I think a lot of runners will identify. We see higher risk of stress fractures and lower bone density. We see poor wound healing. We see impaired immune function. So somebody's getting sick all the time. Why have I gotten 6 colds? You see mood disturbances, higher incidence of anxiety and depression. So you might say that might be something someone can recognize, although we get really good at just saying, well, either that's how I am or it was always like that. Ask your good friends or family members. Sleep disturbances, did I say poor muscle recovery, endocrine dysfunctions, metabolism. It's really every single system in our body. Okay. We get GI stuff, so the gut will slow down. You get a lot of constipation, a lot of IBS. A lot of runners will come to me with that. And then we find, totally hear that your stomach is hurting and that you have IBS and you're constipated. And the doctor said they couldn't find anything wrong, but I can't help but notice when I do my calculations, I don't think you're eating enough. Does that resonate? And sometimes they're like, no, I'm totally eating enough. Or sometimes they're like, I thought you might say that. Or,
Okay. So okay. Thank you for sharing those. Now I want to get back to masters. If those, if the bone density and the menstrual cycles are the kind of most obvious way in flag signal in runners under, let's say, before menopause, what is it the other symptoms you mentioned after that? What would someone, if they are over the point of menopause, past menopause, how would they know if they're not fueling enough?
Right. So average age, probably somewhere around 52 or whenever it happens.
Yeah.
Sure, it gets harder. We lost our overt sign of, are you menstruating? But all of the rest of the things are still there. So we'd see, are you getting more colds and infections? Are you not recovering? Are you not sleeping? Do you feel higher rates of anxiety and depression? Of course, it's like one of those TV commercials. You read all the signs and symptoms. Many people will have one of them, right? Like, I'm not sleeping well. Am I under fueling? I don't know. Let's look at the rest of, maybe you have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. That's why you're not sleeping. Like, maybe that's it. But there are a lot of other signs. And if we're in trouble or if we have any doubts, I mean, I'll have people come to me and they just want to check in. Like, am I eating enough? Again, not to plug my profession, but this is what we do. It's not that hard. If you go to somebody who works with athletes, like, again, that board certified specialist in sports dietetics, it's the CSSD credential after the RD or the RDN, means this person works in sports and should know what they're talking about, and should be able to give you an appropriate number of carbs and protein and all of that. So that would be one way to check in. I think that can be a great idea for athletes at some point. It may not be accessible to everyone. It may be covered by insurance, by health insurance. For some people, it may not, which is a little bit of a harder barrier. But then in that case, go look towards, like, these books are not expensive. So, if you've got $25 over the course of a year to save up for a book, we can use a resource. And Nancy Clark was the first one. Her stuff is timeless. Maybe we have a few new bits of research on 25 years ago. They didn't know that we need more protein when we're 40. Okay, well, now we do. But the rest of it's all right. So get a good resource. If you're going to look for information online, make sure the people that you're reading the information actually are credentialed and know what they're talking about, not just, a famous person who feels like touting their latest cleanse, because that's not right.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, I want to get into some of the specifics of masters just to wrap up in just a second. But what about for someone who has a history of disordered eating and they are now a masters athlete? How much damage can your past do? And how can that impact kind of your perspective on your body now?
That's a big question. I guess what I'm first wondering is, like, what's the most useful to that person in this point of time? What's done is done. So my peak bone mass is long behind me. Let's say they're 50, 60 years old, right? Peak bone mass is long behind you. Whatever's happened has happened. But there's always a chance to do better now, and your body will recover. Just like my dad quit smoking at a certain age, his lungs improved thereafter. Is it enough? I don't know, but you better quit now instead of just smoking won't help, so why don't you just stop? Not that it's easy to stop, but never let maybe it's too late for me to change, hold you back. So I would say, look for the things that you want in your life and in your running. And I do keep speaking about the freedom, partly because for me, running provides some freedom from whatever it is I need freedom from at the moment. And also, if we can free ourselves from these thoughts that are holding us back about food and our body, like, how much time is it worth in my day to decide whether I want to eat how much of this cookie or the scone, or whether I'm allowed to eat gluten-free bread? I think we could arguably say it's really not worth that much time. But when it's taking a long time, or the thoughts are taking up a lot of our day, that's another sign that you're under fueling, and that, hey, if we're willing to dig in there and get to the bottom of this, you can find a lot of freedom on the other side.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, no, that does. Yeah. I'm obviously not there to be able to put myself in those shoes exactly, but
because you're so young.
Well, that depends who you're asking. If you ask my daughter, I'm ancient.
That's right.
Okay, so just I want to be respectful of time here, but quickly, with masters runners, you mentioned more protein. What else should they know?
The protein is going to be the biggest. So if we want to just circle back on that for a moment, and I say I'll be thankful to, but also understand the limitations of, let's say, sports marketing products. So there are a lot of products that are marketed for recovery. And thankfully, they now contain protein, which, again, when I was in college, they didn't. It was all just carbs. Like, runners need protein? What? Yes, we do. If you haven't heard already, we need a lot of protein. We need as much as a lot of the strength training athletes, and that rocked everybody's world over the past 20 years. And now we know. So we need more protein, but as we age, we need more protein as well. We're just not absorbing the protein as well. We're not assimilating it as well. And that's tricky because a lot of people, I mean, I interviewed some amazing people in this book, Catherine Switzer, and then her husband and one of their running partners who are amazing athletes. And Catherine is not, but I believe Norman was in his 80 plus category, rocking the age group in the on the track. It's like, I don't really want protein all the time. So sometimes it gets harder, especially as we get older, to take in enough, but that becomes important. So if you see those marketed products that say you need 20 grams of protein after a workout and you're 20 to 35 or 15 to 35, that's for you. If you're 35 and older, you can join me over here, and you've got a little time over there, Tina. Join me over here, and we need to know that that's not enough. So if I'm using a protein powder, I may need more. Or if this article said 20 grams of protein and didn't mention the fact that masters athletes need more, we now know that. And so I just need to figure out, how do I get that after my run? Do I want more yogurt in my smoothie? Do I want a bigger piece of chicken? Do I want some more beans in my salad? You know, just because the salad place put 3 ounces of chicken or a half a cup of beans into my salad does not in any way mean that meets my needs, right?
That's
so knowing, I need to choose more there.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Okay. So you mentioned your book. Tell people where they can go find it and where they can follow along with you in the future, or us.
Thanks, Tina.
Read up more.
Yeah, thank you. So my book is called High Performance Nutrition for Masters Athletes. It's published by Human Kinetics, so it's on their website. And you can, of course, get it on Amazon, which is super easy for everybody as well. On Instagram, which I do as well as I can on there. Sometimes I'll post a lot, and then a week I'm busy and I don't, so bear with me, but I try. And my Instagram account is really a mix of real sports nutrition advice mixed with the practicality of how it works in my life as a busy athlete mom person, which is originated in me talking to my clients. And they're always like, what do you do? How do you do this? I'm like, well, I'm just going to post it and show you.
Yeah.
You know, this is what it looks like today. And that's where I get the comments on, what, you ate an eggplant parm hero? I'm like, yes, we did. And everything is fine.
Yeah.
So I'm at Nutrition Energy, which is the name of my practice. So at Nutrition Energy on Instagram. And then my website is nutritionenergy.com. And my email is Lauren@Nutrition So the concept, nutrition should give us energy. It should be a positive, right?
Yes, I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren, for all that you have done and continue to do. As you said, we could talk for hours more about this topic, and maybe we'll do that again in the future. But thank you so much for sharing with us today.
You are so welcome, Tina. It is absolutely my pleasure. And I agree. Thank you to Christine for connecting us. The world of runners and friends and people is beautiful.
Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community, to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. She is awesome, isn't she? I was so appreciative of that conversation. And there was actually quite a lot more I wanted to cover, which is a shame because I really would have loved to dig in further. But we will have another episode on nutrition, maybe with her, maybe not. But I thought she did a great job there. And I'm just very appreciative of her approach there. Very real and relatable for us. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today. Tracksmith, you can get yourself free shipping and give 5% of your order to Runners for Public Lands as a donation with your order. That is my favorite nonprofit, and I love that Tracksmith is supporting them. So you can go to the links in the show notes. That's probably the easiest way to go get it. Or you can go through the social link in my social media profile to go get that special offer. Or you can just use code TINA15. That's probably the easiest way. Thank you to InsideTracker for sponsoring this episode. You can get 25% off by going to InsideTracker.com/Tina to go get your blood work checked out. And remember, as I said in that episode, Lauren talked about the fact that she believes runners should be getting their blood tested at least once a year. And finally, go check out the Boulder-thon race. I am really excited about this one. I haven't decided if I'm going to go to it or not, but it looks like a lot of fun, and I am loving hearing some of you are thinking about signing up too. That is so cool. I'd love to see you there, and either way, I hope you have fun if you decide to go. You can go to boulderthon.org, and if you use code TINA, you can get $20 off your half marathon or full marathon registration price. You can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes at runningforreal.com/episode 296. That's runningforreal.com/episode 296. On Monday, we have a together run for you. And then next Wednesday, another running reunion episode. If you haven't listened to those, go check them out. Thanks for listening, my friends. I'll see you next week.